Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Amber from Cult Life escaped, and Bigfoot's barber shop. Yes, you both have already snuck past my guards and made your way into the Fox Den for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on LordeStarfox Radio. Yeah, I really do need to indulge myself. Absolutely delicious, and thank you for bringing gifts. I have been sleeping for so long and really did need to replenish lost nutrients. Now that Amber and Bigfoot's barber shop have released me from my shackles, it is once again time for us to take a walk into the madness.
Stood up. I said, oh my god, it's a werewolf. And everybody in the car freaked out.
My creatures of the night. Yes, again, it is Midnight Lycanthropy time here on LordeStarfox Radio. We have a new host and a special guest joining Mr. Barber and myself in the Fox Den. She has already started to set up the fire so that we can burn the timber into the early hours of the morning in an attempt to figure out what the heck is happening with missing people and strange sightings. Amber, my friend, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for allotting some time to hang out with us. This is excellent. Mr. Barber, my guy, how are you doing?
We're doing good. Busy week. Kids on spring break. Jim's busy. And I have to admit, when you told me who we were having on tonight, the only thing I knew about Jehovah's Witnesses were the jokes I heard as a kid. So I wanted to deep dive a little bit, and it's a much deeper topic than what I actually thought it was. So it's going to be really interesting to hear.
Definitely some pretty deep stuff for sure. And before we start diving into what Amber would like to talk about to the audience, yes, we are also going to get Amber's opinion on some of the stuff that Mr. Barber and I have been diving into, the missing people and the strange canine sightings. But before then, Amber, would you like to give a little introduction to the audience, to myself and Mr. Barber, who you are, why you have your TikTok and your social medias, basically what you're trying to do at the moment?
Okay, so I'm fifth generation Jehovah's Witness, which is fairly rare. Most people's family line doesn't go that deep, but mine goes back to the early 1900s, even before they were called Jehovah's Witnesses. They didn't take that name on until 1931. And I broke away from the cult in early 2022. And it was not an easy thing to accept that at 37 and a half, my whole life had been a lie. But it had been, and I had to swallow that pill and start researching to verify that it was a cult and that it wasn't what I thought it was, which was the truth. That was what I was always told. And it has severed my family relationships ever since then, because you're either in it and you have your family, or you're out and you lose everyone. So that's kind of in a nutshell, I guess. A big nut.
Yikes, that is some pretty terrifying stuff. A terminology I like to use, because it is also my second podcast, no pun intended, with Barb, is that is some nightmare fuel, hence camps in front of that. I do not really know how to even process that. I've seen things that occur along the lines of that. I definitely try to learn, just be aware of things. And there's been times where I've been researching, editing, and History Channel is something I have on in the background, and something will pop up with that. Very bizarre stuff. And I do know there are some people on my team, also people that contact us, that, think there's also some sort of werewolf like cults and things, which is probably something that I, again, haven't had a chance to dive into. But I mean, cults have been occurring, unfortunately, since humanity's been a thing, even probably prior to what we're recognizing at the moment. Who knows? Neanderthals and Denisovians could have had some sort of cult-like behaviorisms as well that we just haven't had a chance to acknowledge yet. That's some pretty creepy stuff. Mr. Barber, how do you feel about all that, my friend?
Very interested in hearing Amber, if she's willing to talk about because if you go to the JW, org, it paints a beautiful picture of things, but behind the scenes, of course, there was something in there that caused you to leave. So I was curious what, if you're willing to share what some of the events were, and obviously the whole consequences of
Right.
that.
So, growing up in it, my whole family was in it. So you don't ever think like, is this the truth? Because you've just accepted that it is. Your whole family believes it, and you trust them, so you assume it is the truth, and they've never questioned it, as far as you know. And it's it's so ingrained that even the terminology, so cults use like their own terminology, which if you watch any cult documentaries, you'll hear them use certain verbiage that is like, oh, that's different. And so in the Jehovah's Witnesses, they actually refer to the religion as the truth. So for instance, Amber came into the truth, or Amber was born into the truth, or she left the truth, that kind of thing. So, it's so ingrained that this is truth. And so you don't question it. And because we are not supposed to be socializing with people outside of the organization, like, yeah, we go to school and we go to work, we have like secular jobs and things like that, but we're not supposed to be establishing friendships with those people. So on the surface level, many people are familiar with Jehovah's Witnesses. Oh, my neighbor's a witness. Oh, my coworker is a Jehovah's Witness, and they're fine for the most part. I have had some people say, oh, they're terrible, but overall, the Jehovah's Witnesses aren't the problem. It's the leadership. And for me, I never questioned it until gave me an opportunity to step back, because when you're in it, and that's what they want you to do, you're going to, we call it going to the meetings, but it's church. So you're going to church 2 to 3 times a week. You're going out in service, like door to door. Now they're doing the cart witnessing, or what kind of, there's letter writing. There's all these different ways that you can, get your field service in. And so the whole point is to keep you busy within that organization. And then hit, and everybody moved to Zoom, and they stayed on Zoom longer than any other organization did. They were on Zoom for 2 years. And if they had only been on Zoom for a year, 6 months, even maybe a year and a half, I wouldn't have woken up, I don't think. It took 2 years of that separation, and we were still logging on, but it took 2 years for me to start to question, why have we been on Zoom for so long? Because they have always pushed us, like, go to the meetings, don't miss the meetings. And so it gave me a chance to step back and start to question it. And then my husband was like, well, you know that they've been selling off Kingdom Halls. which was shocking because one, as members, we build those, like they're big on free labor. And so everything is considered a privilege, quote unquote. And so if you were a contractor, a plumber, an electrician, I mean, you're going to step up and you're going to help build those kingdom halls. I was helping build kingdom halls as like a child. I mean, it's like 10 years old. And the idea that they were selling them off didn't make sense to me because their narrative was always like, we're growing, we're growing, we're growing. Well, why are you selling off kingdom halls and making millions of dollars when you got it for free, essentially? And so to find out that they were profiting while their members were suffering in isolation because we weren't allowed to socialize with each other. I mean, they were adamant, like, you're not supposed to be socialized. I didn't like that either. And so that was the beginning of the end. And once I realized this isn't the truth, because for me, there are a lot of JWs. I mean, they watch my stuff, which is shocking too, because they're really not supposed to be. But there are a lot of JWs that watch it and they don't see, like they're going like, this is a lie, you're lying, even though I'm literally showing clips from jw.org, like from their stuff, and they just don't see it. Like they just can't. But for me, once I saw that crack, I was like, well, if this is false or if they're doing something sketchy here, then the whole thing's a lie. Because you don't get like a little bit of truth. And so and they never claimed like we're the closest. I do hear that argument from JWs in my comments. Well, we're the closest. They never say that from the stage. They say they're the one and true religion. So if you've got false stuff going on, then the whole thing's a sham. And that was it. I was done. Like I didn't keep staying in. I was done from that moment because you're not actually, people claim that they enjoy it, but all those same people, once they're out, they go, no, I didn't enjoy it. You convince yourself that it's enjoyable because it's what keeps you going, but nobody's looking forward to the meeting all day long because the content it's the same old content, and it's very like gloom and doom, like you better do this and stay obedient, stay patient, do all of this, or you're not going to make it. And it's just the same message, and it's a very negative message, and it's never about God's grace or anything. It's always about basically salvation by works, which is not biblical. But it wasn't something I found enjoyable. I always had a problem with the shunning, even though I had been disfellowshipped in '04, from '04 to '07. I felt that I deserved it, and I took the shunning from, everyone shunned me, like the whole anybody in the organization shuns you, including your own family. But it never felt right to me that you would shun people at the meetings, like at church. I got it, oh, you run into them at Walmart, like you don't socialize with them, fine. But it didn't seem right to shun people in God's house, essentially. So there were always certain things that I felt were unkind and cruel, but not enough to doubt the whole religion. It was just kind of something like, well, I guess this is how God wants it, so we do it, but it doesn't seem very kind. And so once I realized that the whole thing was a sham and realized that what you're doing to people is really screwing with their mental health, and many people have sadly themselves due to the shunning, I was like, I'm out. This is false, and I'm not going to do it.
So they did like, talking as most other groups do. They just keep you so busy you don't have time to question it. And like you said, you were raised into it, so there really was no other way. That was just your reality. So when you start questioning it, it kind of turns everything upside down for you.
Right. And because you're only supposed to be socializing with other Jehovah's Witnesses, you would never say, hey, doesn't something seem off about this religion? Like you would never say anything like that. And they know that, because if you were to question anything, then you're considered an apostate, right? And there's nothing worse than an apostate. And an apostate to them is someone who speaks negatively about the organization and God, because they've linked the two. But I never say anything negative about God because my relationship with God is very important to me. And they don't, the members don't see that. They go, well, if you're saying something negative about the leadership or the organization, then you're an apostate and you've turned against God. And so it's a really sad thing. But when you're in it, nobody talks about it. You don't question anything. And so because everybody is, united in their thinking, and that's a big thing. They go, we're a united brotherhood. Well, of course you're a united brotherhood, because anybody who has a differing opinion is kicked out for apostasy.
Since I had a friend who, she left the organization, and ran her mouth, about how awful it was and everything. And then I think it was like 6 months later, she disappeared. So I messaged her and she says, well, I'm back with the organization now. And I'm like, why? With the way you talked? And she's like, I missed my family.
Correct. That's a big
So,
one. And they've been pushing that because they lost a ton of people during, they won't admit that. But if you ask, and I see it in my comments, people go, oh, I woke up during too. So many people woke up because they got that break from having to be in the Kingdom Hall. Yeah, you were still watching it on Zoom, but it didn't have the same effect. And it was easy to like miss a meeting by not logging in. Or even if you logged in, like there were times when we would log in, but we hadn't eaten dinner. So we're like still cooking dinner, and you're not really paying attention. And what they started doing because of that was they were like, welcome all your, they made changes because they were at risk for losing their tax exemption in Norway, and overshunning of minors specifically. And so they made these adjustments. They got new light or whatever, and they made these adjustments. So, now a disfellowshipped person is now called removed. So we don't disfellowship, we remove them. It's the same thing. Nothing's different. They just changed the term because I guess it didn't sound as harsh. And then they said you can also give a small greeting to a disfellowshipped person at the Kingdom Hall, right? So this isn't like a, overall, like you can text them and call them and go out to dinner or whatever. It's literally like if you see them at the Kingdom Hall, you can say, hey, it's nice to see you. And that's it. And so they did that to try to get their tax exemption back, which unfortunately it went to the, I guess, Norwegian Supreme Court. And the problem is they don't really realize what's going on in the organization. And so they said, oh, okay, we see, and they gave it back to them, which is terrible. But what happened during that whole period of time was they were telling everyone, reach out to your disfellowshipped loved ones and welcome them back and tell them they can get reinstated really quickly, because they made changes to, now you can get reinstated within a few months, because before they would make you crawl for it. And even to get reinstated, you have to write a letter and request. So when I was disfellowshipped, I wrote a letter, and I got disfellowshipped in 2004 for fornicating with my boyfriend, who's now my husband. Okay. And then in late 2005, we got married. Well, they didn't reinstate me for a year and a half after I got married. So even though I wasn't doing the thing, they still were like, well, we don't think that you're repentant. And I'm like, first of all, that's not your call, right? That's God's call. Second of all, if I got married and I stopped doing that thing, then doesn't that show repentance? Otherwise, I'd have just kept doing it. And so I wrote a letter after, I don't even know, like after a year, a little over a year. And the elder said, no, we don't think you're ready. I was like, oh, okay. And then I wrote another one a couple of months later, and they were like, okay, we're going to reinstate you. And I was pregnant with my son at the time. I was probably 7 months pregnant. So I was pretty big by then. And as soon as they made that announcement at the Kingdom Hall, everybody like love bombed me. Oh, when are you due? And we're so happy. And we've been wanting to talk to you. And it's like, the only reason they don't talk to you is because these men said, oh, don't talk to her. Not because they didn't want to, or they thought I was this horrible person, but because they're strictly following men's rules. So, there are people that are disfellowship. They've been disfellowship for years they're not doing the thing that they got in trouble for or whatever, but they're still not allowed to be talked to because the elders haven't made that announcement.
So the shunning is bad enough. Do they have other punishments that they do? I mean, is it, certain groups put you in a certain labor intensive training and things like that?
Well, I mean, since you're doing all of the building work anyway for free, I guess the whole organization is based on, unpaid labor, but that's seen as a privilege. So as far as like the punishment and that kind of thing goes, there's like three levels. So it starts with private reproof, and private reproof is like it's kind of like your first strike, but it's also if like not nobody knows what happened in the congregation. Like if something, say for instance there was a situation that was really public, like you cheated on your husband with somebody else and like everybody knows about it, then they'll do public reproof. But private reproof is just essentially your first strike, and they don't announce it from the platform, and you lose your privileges, which for a woman it isn't anything because we don't have anything other than being able to comment at the meetings. We don't have any privileges. We don't have any leadership roles or anything like that. So for the men, it's I guess a little bit worse, and they can lose their privileges. Like if they were, a ministerial servant or an elder, they'll be removed. And then the second one is public reproof, which they announce that from the platform. So that's kind of like a strike two, or if a lot of people know about it. And so they'll say, okay, we're going to publicly reprove you. We're going to announce it at this meeting. And they want you to be there when they announce it. Like that's a big thing for them. They're like, you should be there because it shows you're repentant, essentially, if you are willing to be, publicly shamed. And so they'll get on the platform and they'll say, this is to announce that Amber has been publicly reproved. And they won't say what it's for, but say you have a boyfriend and he's getting publicly reproved, well, they're going to announce that at the same time, and then everybody puts two and two together. And then the third one, the third strike essentially is disfellowshipping, or now, you're removed. And so they'll get on the platform and they'll say, this is to announce that Amber, they used to say disfellowshipped and then they got sued. So they got new light. Every time they get new light, it's essentially because they got sued. So they used to say Amber has been disfellowshipped. Then they moved it to is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses because they got sued due to a human rights violation, because the courts essentially said that it is a human rights violation to tell people they can't fellowship at church. So they go, well, we'll just say is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. All the members know what that means. It's, it's a shunning. And so then nobody talks to you. And the only way to get reinstated is to continue to go to the meetings and do your best not to miss any meetings, because that's a strike against you. If you don't go consistently, then you're not repentant. And you go for as long as it takes the elders to decide that you've been shamed and shunned enough, and then they'll reinstate you. But you still have to write a letter. So if you decided to, go for years and you never wrote a letter, then you would just never be reinstated.
So with everything that you've been through and knowing there would probably be more to come, what made you decide to go to social media and put it out there?
I really didn't think much of it. I was essentially, I mean, at first I was really, and this is kind of funny to say, but I was trying to get into TikTok shop. And I was like, well, what can I talk about that'll be, that'll get some engagement? And I was like, well, I know, because my husband and I talk about this stuff all the time. And so I started speaking about it, and it just kind of took off. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to do TikTok shop because I don't want people to go onto my profile and see that I'm selling stuff, because that's going to lower my credibility, because then people are like, she's only doing this to get paid. And people still think that. They still think you're only doing this to make money. I don't make any money off of social media. Like I have a little over 8,000 followers on TikTok right now. You don't get any money, I guess, until you hit like 10,000 followers, and then you can join like the creator fund and get paid off of views. But even that, it depends on your views. And so I speak out because it's something that I feel very passionate about, and doing that was a huge step because I panicked when when I first started speaking out. It took a few days, and then I had a video start to go viral, and I panicked because I was like, my family's going to see this and they're going to cut me off because the only people in my family that really knew that I was out was like my mom, but my grandparents, who I'm pretty close to, they didn't know, and I didn't want them to know because I knew that they would um, shun me and cut me off. And so I kind of panicked and was like, oh no, they're going to see it. My husband was like, that's good, like it's getting out. And so the more that that was happening, the more I go, okay, this is my path. And I had prayed about it, and I, felt like God was letting me know, like, this is your path, and this is bigger than your relationship with your family. So like, don't let that hold you back because so many people are hurting, and so many people have left and they're still mentally tied to it. Like, they can't live the lifestyle, but they feel like it's the truth, and they feel like they're wrong for not doing it. And so my videos are also thankfully helping those people to realize that it's not the truth, and you don't have to live with guilt that you're doing the wrong thing by leaving or having left, years ago.
So have you I imagine you have, but have you caught a bunch of heat through, I mean, I know TikTok, the comments can be pretty brutal about, have you had other JWs comment and all that stuff?
Yeah, I've had some that are really, pretty nasty. Like, I had, which, I mean, I'm kind of sarcastic anyway, so I made a video reply to that. But I had one guy that said somebody needs to shut this lady up and put duct tape on her mouth. And so I made a response video where I was like pulling duct tape off my mouth. But that's just who I am. And then I did have a DM from somebody who said, shut your stupid mouth and yourself at Armageddon. And I was like, oh, well, that's cool. And here's the thing, like, the negativity, it doesn't bother me from the standpoint of like, it hurts my feelings and like, oh no, and people are being mean to me. That kind of thing doesn't bother me. I've been bullied by the organization my whole life. And so I don't care about that. What bothers me is that they're so misled and they're so defensive of this organization and the leadership that don't even care about them. They don't know them. It's like they don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and they don't want to know. And it devastates me that they're devoting their life to this organization and essentially like separating themselves from God, but they've been deceived thinking they're close to God. Like, it's such a deception, and it breaks my heart that I can show all of these things and they still refuse to see.
Have you had people reach out like for like help as
Oh,
well?
oh yeah, for sure. And actually, I've connected with one girl, and we're friends now. We talk on the phone and text, and she had been out since 98, but always felt like she was wrong for that, and she just couldn't go back. The anxiety, because essentially it's a doomsday cult, and they're always telling you, you better do this or you're not going to make it. You better do this or you're not going to make it, or don't do this or you're not going to make it. And so it's always like, and they used to have this, I mean, they've changed it because too much time has passed, but it was like, the generation of 1914 will never. So, we're assuming, oh, Armageddon is coming any minute because these people are, they're getting old. And then they changed it and they were like, may never. And then it was like overlapping generations. That's what cults do.
Yeah, kind of. Oops, we read the scripture wrong. We're sorry. We're going to extend this timeline a little bit.
Right. And it's never even like an oops, we got it wrong. They've literally gotten up on the stage and saying, this is how God works. Like, he reveals it in his time. And so there are times when we can, get it not quite right. So not wrong, but not quite right. And then it has to adjust. And they've convinced their members that all these adjustments prove that they're chosen by God, which would never happen in any other scenario. And one of the analogies I use is, if you had a weatherman that was constantly giving you the wrong forecast and always updating it, well, you wouldn't trust him. But I mean, that's what they're doing. And they're doing it with their lives. I mean, their salvation is on the line as far as, I'm concerned. And it's devastating to see that. And it's great when people reach out and they say, oh, your videos have helped me. I've been sharing them with my JW family to hopefully help them wake up. And so it does encourage me to keep going when I do get those kinds of messages, because I do realize that, like, okay, there are people that need to hear this stuff because they need to be validated in that decision to leave or to stay gone.
And Grandma and Grandpa are still talking to you, I hope?
Yeah,
Or just
no.
kind of at arm's length? No.
Yeah, so we went and talked to them just a couple of weeks ago. I've had a rough couple of weeks, honestly, because we went and talked to them. I had been dragging my feet, and my husband was like, you need to share with them because their lives are on the line. I mean, that's how we feel about it. And so we wanted to share. And what we decided to do was not to make it about doctrine, because that'll just go round and round and round, And so we decided, because, my grandfather and my uncle are both elders in the church. And so we decided to speak to them and let them know that there are elders that are being sued personally, and the organization is not stepping in to help them, even though all they were doing was enforcing the policies set in place by the leadership. And now they're, tossed out on their own. And so we wanted to help them. And all they would say, well, we know that we're going to be persecuted, just like Jesus said, and I'm like, okay. And it ended well. It ended like with, like thank yous. They were like, well, thank you for sharing. It was very brave of you to do that. And it ended with hugs and I love yous, but I haven't heard anything from them since, and I doubt that I will.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's tough, but they're third generation themselves.
Yeah.
That's the thing. They're very deep in it themselves. Their grandparents, both of them, for both of those grandparents, their grandparents came into it in the early 1900s. So it's so ingrained. And with their generation at their age, they didn't question anything. So, my generation is questioning things, and that to them is disrespectful.
Yeah. That's the generation that didn't question media. So imagine questioning a very hard set rule religion,
Correct.
if you want to call it that. And so the fact that you were brave enough to even tell them, amazes me. And when you said fifth generation, I'm like, oh, that had to be very close to the beginning, because wasn't it just in the late 1800s that it formed?
Correct. Yeah, correct. So I don't really have, like when those grandparents were born. I don't know. But it had to have been early 1900s, maybe even late 1800s, because I do know that my great grandmother was born in 1922. So, if her parents were, had her at 20, then, they were born in like 1900. So, I don't know, but it goes back really deep, and it's a huge deal to break away from something, because most people are second generation, meaning their parents converted in and then they were born and raised in it and they leave. But to step away, being so deeply entrenched, because that means you're stepping away from all of your family too. And that's a big step. And I just had to go, but it's not the truth. And so I can't do it.
Like I said, when people are willing to put their own happiness on the line in order to help others, I'm always touched and amazed by, admire that strength and courage. So
Thank you.
Continued blessings on what you're doing. What's Lord Starfox think?
Appreciate you right there. No, excellent stuff. I'm just sitting here listening and trying to comprehend. And first off, before I proceed into anything else, I just want to say keep surrounding yourself with people that support you in general, Amber, no matter what. I definitely have my two little brothers and my uncle. I did have my late mother, my late grandmother, but for the most part, I don't have really any support. Once you surround yourself with people such as Mr. Barber and my squad, I like to call it, that's really what you need to do. Just keep on not acknowledging anything negative, more or less, meaning I read my comments to make sure I always respond to the people that show me love. Yeah, if I ever see something negative, I do one of two things. I don't acknowledge it, or I respond, hey, thanks for tuning in, and I do my little Star Fox thing. Meaning, a lot of times, people that are trying to be brutal, or I don't like to swear, but a-holes or whatever, don't know how to respond to when you diffuse the situation. Meaning, if you're like, hey, yeah, like I said, that answer I gave them, they don't have a response to that. Don't ever let anyone tell you because you're a woman you can't achieve things. I actually, the majority of my friends in life, long story short, have always been women. I do have, some dudes like Brian and stuff that are good friends of mine, but for the most part, growing up, guys always tried to hate on my swag, use, the stupid little slurs that no one should use in general, any sort of slurs, but that were prevalent for certain types of people in the 80s. Also, guys would always try to backstab me with girls that I was dating, etc. Whatever. Long story short is I've always been pro supporting women no matter what, meaning giving them opportunities as well, which is also a big reason here on my platform. I always try to make sure to give equal voices to everybody. Yet in history, this is actually proof, okay? Numerous cultures, including the Apaches, for example, the women were just as badass as the men were. I have a lot of indigenous friends who have told me about this as well. They would go on raids with the men, would kick butt cheeks just as much. Picture somebody like Ronda Rousey now, back in the day with something like the Vikings. You want to deal with that? Again, Viking women were extremely badass. Recently, they have found Neanderthal women that were buried with weapons that only hunters would be having, again, showing that they were hunting as well. In ancient Asian cultures, specifically Chinese cultures, ninjas had a lot of females that would participate as well. The moral of everything is keep doing, what you're doing. Don't let anyone stomp on your swagger. I would say just stick around the people that are going to support you, appreciate your time. And I think you're going to keep on doing really excellent things with what you're trying to pursue. A big kudos right there for sure, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, weak men are threatened by strong women, but strong men aren't.
1000%. I mean, everyone is equal and we can all bring great things to the table. So that's why, again, like I said, just keep on doing what you're doing. Excellent stuff. As we are, starting to tie this up, I would like to know your opinion more or less on the Dogman topic, if you've even ever heard of it. Also, potentially, why you think people are missing in national forests.
So I don't know anything about the first thing that you said, Dogman. I don't know anything about that. As far as going missing, I mean, I'm a big true crime fan, and I also do believe in, I guess, aliens, but I don't really I'm very big into spiritual warfare as well. I believe that that's a really real thing, and I think there are abductions, but I think it's, aliens or demonic. And I my husband loves to watch that, Beyond and Back. I don't know if you've seen that, where people have, passed, and what they see, and then they come back and they tell their stories. And so I think that there's a lot of stuff that's going on. And I think that many people are scared to even consider that there's otherworldly things happening, because I think it scares people to think there's anything outside their bubble of reality.
Excellent answer right there. To give you a quick little summary, more or less, of the Dogman, ranging all the way back to 290 BC with Herodotus and Alexander the Great, they reported dog-headed beings that would fight with them and also against them that would live up in the mountains. Now fast forward, all throughout history in every culture, they more or less make references to these strange bipedal-like canines. I don't fully myself yet understand enough about the lore and the magic aspects and the witchcraft for werewolves, but I do know there's a big difference between skinwalkers, werewolves, and dogmen. Yet Michigan, where Brian's from, up here in Maine, there's all these reports ranging back to the early to mid 1800s where people swear up and down they see some sort of quadrupedal and bipedal canine-like creature. We definitely think there's hyenas involved. We think some of the prehistoric animals that should have been extinct, according to science, actually aren't extinct. Pretty interesting topic. In the areas that people are going missing, there's a lot of these sightings. Brian's family actually had an encounter where one of these things unalived their dog by throwing it through the window with a chain wrapped around its neck. It's a pretty interesting topic. There's actually a lot of pretty quality evidence supporting something is going on. I don't fully know yet, nor does my science team. It's pretty bizarre, though. So have you ever heard anything about that, like the Beast of Bray Road or the Michigan Dogman or anything?
No, I haven't heard anything about, I mean, I don't really dig into that stuff, but I mean, I will say I am not one to deny that anything's going on. I mean, we've personally had, paranormal things happen in our own home, and I, fully believe in, you know, spirits and, bad things that can happen. I mean, we had an experience where I always lock the doors at night, because I don't know if you guys know about Richard Ramirez, the original Night Stalker. Part of his MO was he would go and like try the door, and if the door was open, then you were asking for it. And so I always lock the doors at night. That's like my thing. And even though we live in the country, we have a gate at the front of our property. We have dogs, whatever, but I still always do that. And I woke up in the middle of the night, all the lights were on and the doors were open. And I was like, what's happening? And so I asked the kids, I asked my husband the next morning, and they were like, we didn't even get up in the night. And, nothing was disturbed, but there was, stuff going on in our home. And we got rid of anything in the home that we thought may have bad things attached to it. And, I got rebaptized in 2023. My husband got baptized for the first time in 23, and we haven't had anything since then. But I fully believe that there are a lot of things that we are not aware of. I mean, even admitted that there's aliens, and everybody was like so more concerned with inflation than that. And so I mean, most people are like, whatever, we don't care. If prices drop, then maybe we'll start caring about other things. But people are just, they're living life, and so many people have no idea what's going on behind the scenes, and they don't want to know. And I think that is such a dangerous thing.
Very well spoken right there. Yeah. Keep on preaching, my friend. You hit so many very important points right there. It's pretty bizarre. One of the really big people in my childhood that got me really interested into this is Jody Cook, and also Linda Godfrey. Rest in peace to Linda. She was a journalist that covered these strange sightings in Wisconsin on Bray Road. And they actually made a really horrible B-flick horror movie back in like 2005 that claimed it was based on a true story. The only true aspect was they were on a road called Bray Road. Everything else was so bad. The werewolf looked terrible, and it was just going around unaliving people and breaking into houses, which is very far from the truth. We've had documents submitted to us where people have seen it, just, consuming something that was unalived on the side of the road, also potentially going after livestock and natural wildlife, but never have we had any cases of it attacking and unaliving people. It's a really bizarre topic, and I know you are extremely busy. Yet if you ever want to learn more about it, I have as much information as I've been able to really gather with my science team and members such as Brian Barber, and you can check out the stuff that we put out here. There's definitely something entwined with the missing people to an extent with Bigfoot and Dogman. We just fully haven't figured it out yet. Almost humorous sounding, though. I mean, we have numerous cases where people have claimed supposedly there's like these werewolf cults and vampire cults. I'm sure there is. Are they actually werewolves and vampires? I can't prove that. I am not involved in that. Yeah, sure. Anyone can more or less act and call themselves like cults. So no, it's super creepy
There's so
stuff.
much, yeah, there's so much going on. I mean, you've got they talk about the tunnels underneath, and there's all this stuff going on, and adrenochrome, and you look at all these celebrities, and it's like, why aren't they aging? What's going on? And I mean, I've heard the conspiracies of, there's women that their jobs are just to have babies over and over again, so that they're breeding for nefarious things, and people don't want to think about that, because obviously we have our own problems in our own lives, but there is a lot of darkness going on, and the more people that start looking into things, the better off we are, I think.
Very well stated again, my friend. Mr. Barber, before we let Amber get back to things she needs to attend to, is there anything else you would like to ask or touch base on?
I have a wish. I want to wish her after a question. The activity in your home, did that begin before or after you decided to wake up, as you put it?
Oh no, that was before. That's when we were in it. And I truly believe that the baptism into the Jehovah's Witness organization is a curse. And so we, once we woke up, or I woke up, my husband was already awake, he just didn't tell me. And so once I woke up, and then we got baptized a year later, nothing happened. Like, everything was fine after that. But the organization itself is also linked to Freemasons, which the members don't know that, but we've looked into that. And my husband's looking into that deeper. And one of the things that they do in Freemasonry, when you're like moving up, I guess, is they like hurl insults at you to increase that negativity, because it allows for more demonic activity to happen. And that's the same thing that's going on in these talks that they give. It's negative phrasing after negative phrasing over and over again. And it opens people up to bad things, but they don't realize it. And what ends up happening is it has the opposite effect that it should. It should pull people out and scare them and go, something's going on here, I got to get out. But it doesn't. It draws them closer into the cult, because they feel like, well, all of this stuff is happening because it's Satan's world, and I need to stay tight in it.
And that makes perfect sense the way you explained it, because, I was just thinking you got a negative feedback loop going there.
Yep.
All that negative energy coming in, but it scares them, so they hold even tighter to something that's causing the problem.
Well, and they started a narrative in 2014 called Best Life Ever. And so now it's like, it's ingrained. This is the best life ever. So if you don't feel like it is, well, then there's something wrong with you. And so, because everybody else feels like it's the best life ever, and they're all fooling themselves too. But, you put that in there to make people feel like they're the problem, which then, it keeps them in there too, because it guilts and shames them into staying.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to, thank you for coming on and sharing, and wishing you, you talk about women in battle with something, at least you got the defense of the love of your family. You've got your courage. And I love the fact that your weapon of choice is sarcasm, because I have a huge place in my heart for that. So thank you.
Yeah. I have to keep it in check.
Excellent stuff again. And yes, you always do have a home here, my friend. You can always reach out to us. We'll try to help you as much as possible and figure out ways to get your content and yourself out there. If you ever need images edited or logos or things like that, definitely just toss me a message. I'll be better at paying attention to my Instagram. I don't use the gram that much. Mostly people
I don't either.
get me through like texting me, or if you have Facebook, hit me up on Facebook Messenger. Even if you don't want to send me a friend's request that way, that goes right to my phone like a text, and I see that very quickly. That's actually how I talk to a lot of my friends out of country that I work with and such as well. So remember, you always got a spot here. We'll always help you out as much as possible, for sure.
Thank you.
Of course. Send over any of the links you would like put up in the description of the video, whether it's to your gram or your TikTok. I personally usually only rock with my YouTube. I do have some other social medias that I periodically check, like when Drewski, who's one of my good buddies, told me to reach out to you, is why I reached out to you on the gram right there for sure.
Yeah, so I actually pay my daughter to post on Instagram because that's not really my jam. I like TikTok. That's my jam. So I post on TikTok and then she posts it. And she's supposed to be posting on YouTube, but she doesn't really like YouTube. I guess that's for, old people or something. And so she's been slow to do that. But that's another avenue. I do have some videos up there already, but she needs to catch up the rest of them. So
yeah, send us that link too. I mean, we can help you out. That's something that I literally spend all my time on, is editing and hooking up with great hosts such as yourself, trying to get myself monetized. So I understand it. Great way to put up longer content, reach a very mass audience. I mean, whether people do truly like YouTube or not, it is ranked either 1 or 2 for the largest social media platform in the world. It's not going away anytime soon, nor is Google. Also, it's got like all the TV stuff they're doing on there. YouTube's definitely evolving quite well. It is something too that will help you out once you get 1,000 subs, 4,000 viewing hours for 365 days. You then can be up for monetization. You can have channel memberships. You can do cool accessories, custom apparel. So a lot of my artist friends have like their Etsy stores up there.
yeah, for sure. Because I don't know anything about YouTube. I think I used to watch makeup tutorials back in like 09 or something.
Yeah, it's a very amazing and strange universe. Long story short is you can find so much amazing stuff on there, whether or not History Channel, you go to that. So yeah, it might not be the most updated brand new episode of per se Swamp People, but they have a whole list of free things you can watch up there. You can hear scientists and things talk about topics. You can hear sports journalists that work for ESPN that have their own podcast and guests that come up per se. There's nature on there. There's individuals such as Mr. Barber and myself. It's a whole different ecosystem. And to be quite honest with you, I have HBO Max through my little brother. I have Hulu, Disney Plus, because I use all their stuff. I find myself watching way more YouTube than I do any of that other stuff.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I don't really watch TV at all.
Yeah, no, I don't either. I like to learn.
I watch Modern Family over and over again, I think.
That's awesome. Well, to my creatures of the night, we do need to allow Amber and Mr. Barber to get back to things they need to attend to. Yet no worries, as we were just mentioning, we will have all of Amber's links up in the description of the video. This way you can check out and see what is she doing and what she's churning out to the world. Make sure to go over and support that. Also, you'll see Mr. Barber's links up there, and you should be well aware of him by now. He's a weekly host. Make sure to check out our prior content and be on the lookout for our new stuff. Yet, at the moment, this will be the conclusion of the meeting of the Midnight Society. Unfortunately for the audience, we cannot hold Amber and Mr. Barber here any longer. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Always good to hang with friends, and it was a pleasure meeting you, Amber.
Thank you. You too.
Ooh, my creatures of the night, you legends, you. I do adore every single one of you. And thank you for hanging out with us tonight. Please like, comment, subscribe, feed the algorithm, and I will catch you very soon.